Hello, this is James Alexander Herzog, and before I start, I'd just like to tell you that this is part of a cybersecurity course that I'm taking, ICS 450, taught by Faisal Kaleem. It's a very interesting course, and I suggest that you take it if you're not already taking it. Well, you're not the teacher. Um, so, I want to mention just right away that this video is intended for educational use. It's not. I can't be held responsible if it breaks something on your network or breaks something on your computer, any damages whatsoever. Um, and yeah, that's it. So I want to mention that I'm gonna talk to you about just kind of an overview of how to get pfSense up and running, some aliases you can set up, how you can do that, and how to set up firewall rules, as well as some nice packages, how to install them, some Suricata is a nice package, which I'll show you how to use and how to configure it, and also weed out false positives because when you first set it up, it has the tendency to just spit out a bunch of false positives. It's very secure, and yeah. So, without further ado, let's go over to the computer and I can show you. Okay, so we are back at the computer, and the first thing you want to do is you want to go to pfSense.org/download, and I should mention that the computer that you want to install this on needs to be 64-bit. They used to have 32-bit, but they have since stopped supporting it. So then you want to click on download, and what I always like to do is get the memstick version, because then you can put it on a flash drive and it's just really nice that way. So you want to click the bigger version. You'll notice that there's memstick versions, and you want to click the newest ISO available, 2.4.4 in this case, and you want to pick the bigger file because the other one's just a SHA-256 key for verification. So you download that, and then you'll get a file. You'll get this file. So you want to extract it. I've already done that, so here it is. And then there's another piece of software that you'll need called Rufus. Now, there's other software like this, but I just find this to be the easiest to use. So once you download Rufus, this is what it looks like. You'll want to set it to DD image. Make sure you have a flash drive plugged in, that you don't care what's on it, because it's going to format it. And then select the disk image, hit open, and then press start. And that's it. Okay, so this is the internet interface. This is your router interface. You'll never have to access this very often, just if there's some major problem. But and obviously now, but so it's just kind of nice to have like a spare keyboard and mouse, keyboard and monitor connected. Well, just laying around. But anyways, so you can see those two NICs here. In my case, NG0 and BFE0. They're both set to down. And if you have more NICs, then you'll see more listed here. But I just have two, and that's the minimum for pfSense. Well, technically you can run it on one, but it won't do you any good. So here they are again. You can see I have a national semiconductor gigabit Ethernet and a Broadcom adapter. I know it's fast Ethernet, but I'm poor, so so it's asking, should VLANs be set up right now? 99% of the time you're just going to say no. VLANs are for if you want to separate a network out but don't have like the switches and the separate NICs and all the infrastructure for that. You can separate it. I sort of virtually in some ways. So here it's going to ask you enter a WAN interface name or press A for auto detection. Well, let's say I do know which NIC it is, but let's just say I have a lot more NICs and I don't know. So what you can do is press A, and this is a nice feature. So you can choose to plug in the cable and wait for the link to come up, which, you know, just comes up in a second after you plug it in, and then press enter. So let's do that. Trying to plug it in through the viewfinder. Okay, so you can see that's up, and then we can press enter. So then it detected it and made its WAN interface. Now the other one, since I just have two interfaces, it's pretty obvious which one is the next one, but if you have more NICs, you know, you can also do the same thing for that one too. So then there it is. There's just kind of a summary. So let's continue. And this will take a second. I mean, if I've learned anything about computers in all my time of working on them, it's that patience can be... I've just learned to be really patient. So it's almost coming up. It's starting the firewall. And as you may have heard, or maybe not have heard, it doesn't loan nice song and dance. Well, not a dance, but a song nevertheless. And I mean, it'd be kind of cool if it opened and closed the CD drive a couple of times, but whatever. It's, you know, I don't fault it too much for that. Anyways, so we want to set interface IP addresses. Now what this is going to do is we want to set up a DHCP server on the LAN interface, just so whatever we plug in the network will get an address. It's just a lot easier that way. So obviously we want to pick LAN, and you'll notice that goes based off of the numbers here and here. So let's set this. Have to turn number lock on first. So I actually kind of liked the address it got here, the 1.1. So I'm gonna actually choose that for its interface. I always like to put the first address being the router, the gateway out to the internet. And then it has you pick a subnet mask. Now 99% of the time in a home environment you're just going to pick 24. But if you have a larger network or even a smaller network, or just for whatever reason you want to set it to something else, you can change it. And I can't really go into detail about that. It was just, I can't fit all that in 20 minutes, but you can look it up otherwise. Networking is a very long, and I mean there's college degrees over it easily. So you can see for the LAN, all you have to do is press enter here. So let's do that. And I don't know anyone who uses IPv6. But if you do, then enter that your address there. I always like I said, turn on DHCP, and then I'll ask you for the starting address. So I always set this to the address right after the router address, 1.2, of course, comes right after 1.1. So, and then for the next address, we want to pick something right at the end of the address range, unless you have a reason to pick something else. I always revert back to HTTP. It is a best practice to go with HTTPS, but I always just, for beginning configuration, I always start with HTTP. I just find it prevents problems, and frankly, if you're just starting your network, I mean, if there's just, your router and your workstation, your laptop, what have you, there's probably not going to be anything else on the network. I mean, heck, you don't even have an internet connection yet. So I wouldn't worry too much about people spying on you. But if you're paranoid, you can turn that on. So here you can see it tells you the address to configure it. Now you want to remember this address, and then press enter to continue. So now I'm going to go to my computer and I'll show you how to start configuring it. So we're back at the computer, and you can see that we have an IPv4 address, the 192.168.1.12, and we've gotten this from the DHCP server that we just set up. So what we want to do here is type 192.168.1.1 into any browser. It could be Chrome, Firefox, Internet Explorer, anything. And then what you want to do is put in admin for the username, and then pfSense for the password. Now this is the default username and password for pfSense, and as we can see right up here, it warns us about that, and we will change that in a second. So first, it's welcoming us, which is very nice, and it just kind of wants to tell us about Netgate's global support. This isn't actually anything you would normally have to worry about. They're just kind of advertising that. This software doesn't usually advertise, but this is one of the rare occurrences where it kind of does. And I mean, other than that, it doesn't do anything. So I'm going to call this my server because I don't have any creativity. I'm also going to call this my domain for the same reason. The domain is the domain that shows up when you do like ifconfig, or more likely ipconfig, and just see where it got the address from, the DHCP address. I'm going to put 8.8.8.8 as my primary DNS server. This is Google's public DNS server that they offer to the public, and I'm just going to say don't override DNS. You'll probably want this checked like that, but I just, for what I'm doing, I need to leave this off. So so this is just the NTP server, the network time server. If you want to, you can actually use something else, like NIST has one that they offer to the public, and it's actually a very good one. There's NTP Pool Project. You can also set up pfSense to be its own network time protocol server, so that's always nice. And I've actually heard that you can actually get a GPS module and use that to tell the time and become like a Stratum 0 server. So here you can define what you want your IP address for your WAN interface to be. I would recommend setting this to static and then finding out what address it got. So in my case, it's 192.168.2.20. But I'm not going to do that in my case, just because I have there's a DHCP server in front of it, and your network might be the same way. If you have a network in front of your firewall, you'll probably be fine setting this to DHCP. Typically I just like setting it to static, and actually I could set this just to show you. So, and then you also don't want to block private networks, because again, if you have a network in front of this, that can cause problems. I mean, normally out on the internet, if it has like 192.168.something.something, that's bad. But if you have that out on like your LAN, like you have a network in front of this, and it's fine. You can just leave the LAN settings the same because we've already configured it, and then we want to set a password. And this should be a very secure password and totally not the word password like I just used. So then we want to reload. And again, as with many things in IT, just patience. It just takes a moment. And then we're done. With the initial setup, we're done. You can see that it tells us about the commercial distribution. Just don't distribute this software and like sell it and stuff. But other than that, it's fine. I mean, just yeah. Okay, so we're at the interface. You'll see that it's got quite a bit of information here, and you can actually add more information. This doesn't have thermal sensors, I don't think. But if you wanted to, you could add those. NTP status, firewall logs. It's a good place to just kind of get an overview of everything. And you can drag these around, move them around, like get rid of that. If I can click properly. Oops. Oh, that was a bad idea. 1 second. I've played around with it and I've broken it, but it's fixed now, so that's good. So NAT. So pfSense defaults to having NAT enabled, and it's pretty obvious why, because of IPv4 addresses, there being a lack of them. So obviously when you want to open a port out to the internet, you have to port forward. So this is where you do that, and it also creates a firewall rule along with that, so you don't have to do it twice basically. But I'm just going to show you how to create one, and then I'll show you how to create it with using an alias. It just makes more sense if I do it that way, because that way you get kind of a sense of what it looks like without an alias and then with an alias, and you can start to see kind of why it's so useful. So for the port forwarding rules, you can set up I don't know why you'd want to set it for LAN, but you can set a protocol. For this example, I'm going to pretend like we're making a web server, so I'm just going to keep it with TCP, but if it used UDP or a mixture of both, or even some other protocol, like OSPF or something, which is a routing protocol, you could do that too. The source the source address, that would be your client coming in. So let's just say I have a web server, it's in Canada or something, and someone from Venezuela wants to connect to that server. Well, the source IP address would be the Venezuelan IP, and then the destination would be your Canadian IP. So that's just kind of how you'd think of it. So you can actually set this to either just exclusively allow just certain source IPs, or you can just have it, like if you use this invert match button, you can actually exclude those IPs and then allow all the others. And you can create other rules and stuff to fine-tune how you want your network to work, but for the most part you don't need to touch a source. That's why it's under this advanced tab. You can also set the source port. So this isn't really a good option in the days in today, because most people are using NAT, or which is more technically supposed to be called PAT, port address translation. But so basically what happens is there's you get one IPv4 address, and then your router sends you out to websites and other web traffic on using a different port, like one of the many different ports, and then it just keeps track of that to facilitate communication. So it's really not that useful, just because in most cases this is going to be random, so you wouldn't want to filter based on that. But you could, if you wanted to, say you've got like some special setup where PAT, your clients won't have PAT, you can probably do this, and if they're set up properly, they can connect just on certain ports. It's just added security if you need it. There's a lot of options in here that you probably won't need, but when you do need them, it's very, very nice. So the destination, now this would be to your web server. So let's just say I have a web server that's, I don't know what that was about, that's on 192.168.1.20. Now I don't have a web server though, but hypothetically, let's say I do. Then we want the port range to be HTTP, because we're assuming that the client's going to just request a regular HTTP. They're not going to have like google.com:80269 or something. And then the target IP is going to be just the same thing as what we put above, the same thing as we have right here. And then the redirect target port, again, HTTP. We're assuming that inside the network it communicates on the same port. If I wanted to, I could configure a web server to use like ODP, like the ODP port, and then it would just change that from port 80, the HTTP port, to the ODP port. But there's no need for that now. Description, this is simply for your own notes. So I'm just going to put access to the web server there. And then NAT reflection is, it's really nice because when you're inside a network and you want to see your own web server that's also on the network, you'd normally have to put your internal IP. But with NAT reflection, what you can do instead is put your external IP, and then you'd be able to get to your website. It actually loops around and goes to the web server, which is really nice, especially in the case where you have a domain, because then you can just access it at, whatever, www.whatever.com. And then the filter rule association, chances, I've never had to change this, but what this controls is whether or not you want it to automatically create a firewall rule for you. But I've never needed to change that. So then we click save, and then you'll notice that it says NAT configuration has been changed. The changes must be applied for them to take effect. You want to click apply changes, and then it'll say that, completed successfully. And then you can just close that. And then I'm going to show you the rules. You can see here that it's created the rule again. So I'm just going to talk a bit about firewall rules. I'll start here. So pfSense, it goes through rules from the top down to the bottom. So if it detects, if traffic comes in and it matches a rule, that is, like, it goes down the list, checking to figure out what it should do with that traffic, and if that traffic matches whatever rule that traffic matches first, it'll use. So just kind of keep that in mind. And then also, so for each rule, you have a bunch of options. You can so, of course, there is the normal, do you want to allow this traffic or do you want to block it? As we can see right here, pass is the same as allow. But you'll see there's also this reject rule, and what that does is it sends a packet back to whoever sent the packet to you, just kind of to tell it that you can't do that, that's not allowed, kind of thing. If it's TCP, it sends a reset packet. If it's if it's UDP, it sends a ICMP port unreachable packet. And I almost always use block unless I have a reason to use reject, just because block blocks it silently. It doesn't send a packet back to the sender. So that means that if there's a hacker, he's trying to figure out what ports you have blocked, he won't have any way of knowing if there's just isn't a server at that address, or if a firewall blocked it. He can't really tell. Whereas with reject, he always knows that it's actually been blocked by something like a firewall. So it's just kind of some pseudo security there. It's just kind of a good idea. The disable rule function is pretty useful. If, say, you want to remove a rule, well, you want to stop a rule from working, but you don't want to delete the rule entirely. Say you've got something really custom, or something you've put a lot of work into, you don't want to lose that, so you can just disable the rule, and then it's just a simple button press to re-enable it, just if you have problems or something. Address family, it just kind of is what kind of internet protocol the rule pertains to, so IPv4, IPv6, or a mixture of both. Source we've looked at, destination we've looked at, log packets. Now, this is good if you're exposing something really kind of sensitive out on the internet, say like your SSH port or something, um, but you don't want to log everything because that'll fill up your pfSense box with logs, and plus, if you ever have to look at the logs, it's going to make it a lot harder to find what you're looking for because it's going to have all these entries. Description, same thing as before, just kind of good to find what you're looking for again. Source OS. Now that's this is kind of the advanced options. You typically don't need to go into these, but I'm just going to talk about a few of these. So Source OS is what operating system the client, the sender, is using, and you can actually specify that and filter based on that. Say you want, here, I'm going to try and find Windows. It's all the way at the bottom. I think I just saw OS2. Yeah, OS2. So say say I want just Windows XP to be able to access my website, but I don't, for some reason, I don't want to allow Windows Vista to access the website. Like, I could do that. Well, just allow Windows XP and nothing else. I haven't used it before, so I don't know how accurate it is, but I would imagine it's pretty good. So max states is and max connections kind of go hand in hand. They it's the number of connections they allow, basically, and same with source connection. Oh, sorry, max concurrent. Yeah, max source concurrent rate and rates. Just rates is just kind of how many connections can happen per how many seconds. You can also specify specific TCP flags that you want to allow. pfSync is so if you have a big company or you just really, I don't know, maybe an extreme home user might also use this, like a super extreme home user. If they can't afford downtime and they have like multiple pfSense boxes, what you can do is you can sync those, and those can work in like a cluster, a failover, or a load balancing cluster. And what that allows you to do is, say one pfSense box dies, then the other one can pick up where the other one left off. And as far as I'm aware, you don't lose any traffic. Again, it's a thing I haven't been able to play it with yet, but that's what I've heard. And then, what else was I gonna say? You can also have like links like that too. So if you have multiple modems or something crazy like that. So scheduling. This is a cool feature. I've actually used this before. If you want to have your rules set up so only at certain parts or times of the day the rule will be enabled, you can do that too. You can set it to specific days. Say you have, like, I don't know, you want to allow let's say an email server. I don't know why you do this, but say you only want to allow an email server to access the internet like once, like for 5 hours every Wednesday or something. You could set that up. you can also set gateways for if you have multiple gateways. Don't really need to worry about that, like multiple modems and that sort of thing. Acknowledgement or acknowledge ACK queue and the other queue. That's for packet shaping, which I'm not gonna go into in this video. It's just a very complicated topic, and there's a lot to it. There's a lot of different queues and whatnot, so it's just a lot of content, and frankly, it's beyond the scope of what many people need. So again, when you click save, it prompts you if you want to make it it double checks with you to see if you really want to do this. So you say yes, and then good. So I'm going to show you what aliases are. So aliases, it's just like what it sounds like. It's a name you can give for another thing or even a group of things. So this can be based off of IP addresses, ports, and URLs. Now URLs are like if you know a website that provides a list of like malicious IPs, for example, or that sort of thing, you can actually have pfSense download those lists every so often. You can specify, and you can write firewall rules based off of that. There's another package called pfBlocker ng, which uses this. You can download giant, and I mean like giant lists, and it can create these massive, like, 100,000 line files that it serves up in its own little web server, and then that's what the URL alias thing uses to connect to, so you can create firewall rules like that. But for now, I'm just going to show you IP addresses, so let's go to that. So as you may remember, we had a web server, so let's put in web server. And again, I'm so original. And then for the IP address, you want to put in whatever the IP is. And this, you may never have to type this again. And as you can see, you can set a description here for that specific server. And then you can also set multiple servers if you wanted to. So you could actually have firewall rules that pertain to like as many servers as you want. Well, I shouldn't say that. I think the limit's like 5,000, but yeah, you don't. It's pretty much as many as you want. I mean, at that point, you can probably afford to have a little web server to serve up larger lists. So then I'm going to save that and then apply changes. And then if I go to NAT, and you can see it hasn't changed, but if I click properly and I go to here to destination, you can start typing, and you can see when I put in start typing web server pops up. So this actually replaces IP addresses, and the same thing is true down here, and it's also true if you have a port alias and you have like others selected. If I were to type like web ports, of course I didn't create an alias containing web ports, but if I had, it would have popped up there. Not very useful, just considering that already exists in pfSense, but um, imagine if you had something with that, obviously you don't see like Minecraft server in here, something like that. So if you wanted to, you could actually create a alias for Minecraft servers. I've also seen it for TeamSpeak. I've done that before. TeamSpeak has a bunch of ports that they want you to open, so rather than creating a bunch of rules, you can just create one alias with all of those ports in it, and then create a single rule using that. That's very nice. And as you'll see, it actually makes it easier to read because it just says web server. You don't have to scratch your head thinking what's 192.168.2.12 or 2.20. You can just see the name and know immediately, oh, that's my web server. And if I go to rules, the firewall rules, you see that it does the same thing. And the same is true with ports and even URLs if you wanted to, if you had set that up. So it's very powerful. And this, there's a lot of options in here. Just out of the box, pfSense is very, very powerful. But there's also more to it. You can actually install packages. So these are like, you can kind of think of these like being plugins, like what Firefox or Chrome have. It extends the functionality past what the base browser has. So how you install these is actually quite easy. When you first click on Package Manager, it shows you what installed packages you have, which of course we don't have any because we haven't done anything, but if we went to Available Packages, and then it has a problem because I'm recording. Okay, sorry about that. I'm not entirely sure why that was being so weird, but it's working now, so I haven't had that problem before. So as you can see, there's a lot of different packages here. And there's Free Radius, there's Darkstat, there's iPerf, Mail Report, Nmap, NTO, PNG, PF Blocker, Snort, Softflow, Squid, Squid Guard, Suricata. The list goes on and on. I'm actually going to show you Suricata today because I find it's very powerful. So, one thing that I want to mention about Suricata is that it can be very resource intensive. So just kind of keep that in mind. And as with a lot of things in IT, just kind of be patient while it does its thing. Okay, so we can see that finished. It, because it says success down there, and the bar is turned from red to green. It's like Christmas colors. And now we can go to the Services tab and go to Suricata. So with Suricata, what you do is you assign it to an interface. Now this can be any interface. This can be your WAN, LAN. Actually, it should be an interface that you have traffic on. So you just click Add here. And by default, they'll choose your WAN, which is good. I would say that you definitely want to make sure this block of vendors is not checked. If you have it checked before you're able to test it and see what kind of alerts you get, you'll basically disconnect yourself from the internet basically, because there's a lot of false positives at first, and it'll just start blocking everything otherwise. It's very, very strict on what it allows by default. So all you have to do here is just click save. And I always like to go to your interfaces again, just to make sure that it got added properly. Now the next thing you want to do is go to your global settings, and then you want to choose this one, this ET open, and this Snort community rule set. You can also do this install Snort rules, however it requires a link master code, and I mean you can check how to do that. You log in to this website and then it gives you a code, but I'm just not going to do that right now. Another thing that I would suggest doing is changing the update interval to 6 hours. I don't know why it defaults to never, because that means they'll never check for updates, but I just like to think, you're only as good as your latest signatures, so you want to make sure you get them as soon as possible. So I don't see any downside to having it set to 6 hours. Honestly, I'd set it to 1 hour if I could. And then you don't have to worry about this now. So now what we want to do is go to updates, and you want to update it just so it goes out and downloads the latest signatures. So this will take a moment. When it finishes updating, then you want to go to your interfaces and just click the play button. Well, actually, no, you want to go and edit the categories first. So I'm getting ahead of myself here. And then I just like to select all. You can go and select these manually, like which ones you want, but I usually just do select all. I don't find any problem with it. It does use more resources that way, but honestly I think it's worth it, and I don't see why that would be a problem. So now that you've done that, you want to start Suricata for the first time. Again, making sure that this is set to disable. Oops. So now what you want to do is you want to start some traffic. Now, what I've done, and you may have noticed this, I've got transmission up here. This is a peer-to-peer file sharing software, transferring software, and I'm going to download Ubuntu 18.10, the desktop version, as a torrent. And Ubuntu, this is completely safe to, completely legal to do. And we'll see when it starts blocking traffic. There we go. We've got some traffic. Yeah, and now it's getting better. So you can now if you look at the alerts, you can see, there we go. We've got something generated here. We have an alert. I'm just gonna stop this for now. So yeah, and even this is interesting, a Tor relay. So I'm guessing one of the peers happens to be using Tor and is an exit node. I mean, perhaps a part of the perhaps they're using some of their bandwidth for Tor or something. Um, so what you can do here is you can go and add these to the suppress list, and what that does is it makes Suricata so it doesn't uh, block this traffic, because of course when you turn blocking on, as soon as you do that, it's gonna start blocking anything that causes an alert. It's gonna block, in this case, this address, this address. So it's gonna block the offending address. And what you want to do from here is you want to start having just using your computer like you would any day. Just keep doing that for about a week or so, and just kind of keep an eye on this alert entries list, and just kind of remove anything that you know is safe, any games you play, any websites you like to go to. Just kind of keep your eye on things and just kind of make sure too much doesn't end up in here. Now, one thing I want to mention right now is that some hackers, they have bought or otherwise compromised some computers, and they've run scripts on them to automatically check different different IP addresses out on the internet, and this means that they'll they check for exploits this way. So of course you'll actually see this in Suricata. You'll see this happening, and you'll see what the addresses are. So you want to keep that in mind. You don't want to allow traffic that isn't legitimate, but you also want to make sure that like nothing you use from a day-to-day basis gets blocked. And when you feel comfortable that you've got the all your false positives taken care of, you can go back to this Interfaces tab and click on Actions, Edit, and then scroll down to Block Offenders, and then click Save. And we can see that's enabled. No new alerts, but if there were alerts, you'd see them in here now. Well, you'd also see it in the Alerts tab, but they would also appear in here, and these are all the offenders that you want to that have been blocked by Suricata. And sometimes I have like a game or something, it downloads a big update or whatever, it might show up in here, and from time to time, if I'm having a problem, I'll usually either find the offending address and then remove it manually from here, or you can click this big, well, not so big, but this red button here, and it'll clear all of these. And because I regularly like have a few hundred addresses in here, so rather than just weed through all that, I just clear the whole list, because I figure if it's a malicious compromised IP that is just scanning the internet, it's just gonna get caught again as soon as it tries the address again. So there's really nothing to worry about. So anyways, another thing I should mention is that if you go to Global Settings and scroll down to this Remove Blocked Host interval, this defines how long you want to block them for. So by default, it just blocks them forever. Well, unless of course you click the clear button, but you can do every 15 minutes, 30 minutes, an hour, 12 hours, even 28 days. So like a month. But honestly, I find that to be a bit extreme. I usually set it to like 1 hour or something, because honestly, unless it's a targeted attack, a hacker is not going to wait around for even 15 minutes to attack, well, to try to attack you again. That just isn't going to happen. So honestly, you'd probably be fine saying that to whatever you want, but anyways, there are other rules like Barnyard 2 that you can have. You can also have like the ET Pro. This is a paid version of the rules, and like I said, install snort rules if you so choose. I mean, again, this is very complex and very configurable software. So honestly, what I would do too is look at the pfSense book. This is a new book that they just released it to the public. It used to be something you had to pay for, but they've just recently released it to everyone. So, and it's very good information. I've learned a lot from this book, and also the docs, which was kind of like the free book, if you want to think of it like that. Now it's just kind of depreciated, but this book gets updated with every version, and it tells you all sorts of information. I mean, honestly, I can't go through and tell you all this information, but I mean, read it if you have any questions. So that's about it. So thank you for watching.